Bienvenue ici. My name is Martin Sampson. Mon nom est Martin Sanson. Je suis le chef de direction de l'Association canadienne des parcs et loisirs. CPRA's purpose is to champion the vital role that the recreation and parks sector plays in building healthy, vibrant, and resilient communities. That's the work that you folks are all doing. Before we get going, I want to share a quick land acknowledgement. At CPRA, we acknowledge that our work and the work of our members and partners takes place on the traditional territories of Indigenous peoples across this great land. We believe we have much to learn from Indigenous knowledge systems, particularly on the existential challenges of climate change and environmental stewardship. By embracing this shared responsibility, we can work toward a more sustainable and just future. Our approach is guided by the belief that our well-being and liberation are bound together with the well-being and liberation of our Indigenous neighbors. Reconciliation is not about helping and saving. It's about listening and walking together on a shared journey, building a future where all communities thrive in harmony with one another and the natural world. I'd like to introduce our partners. We are very blessed at Can Active Insights to have a partnership with the Sport Information Resource Center. You're going to be hearing from my friend and colleague Kim Gertler in a moment. We also have an excellent partnership and relationship with the Canadian Fitness Lifestyle Research Institute. Frankly, couldn't do the work without CFLRI. You're going to be hearing from Dr. Chris Cameron in a moment. We also have Dr. John Spence on the line for any other technical issues that come up during the Q&A. And then, of course, we have lots of CPRA people in and around the table. I'd like to particularly acknowledge the role of Emma Austin, who is really driving the Can Active Insights project forward as a project manager. And I would be remiss if I didn't also mention our data partner, Active Exchange. Alex Burrows is on the call, the CEO, but we also have the pleasure of having Chris on the call. Chris will be there in case we get into the technical questions. And of course, we got Sydney DeChamplain, who will be telling you a little bit about the movement data in a moment. So a big thank you to our colleagues and friends and partners. Our goal today is that we want all of you to come out of this webinar with real knowledge of the movement product, what it is and what it can do. And we want to provide you with some ideas, applications that you can take away and discuss with your team so that you can implement this thinking in your day-to-day work. We're going to be talking about lots of stuff today. There's a lot of free functionality that we want to give to the sector. This initiative really is for the sector and by the sector. And the goal is to really up our game on using data to raise the profile of our sector in the national public policy conversation, because we really believe that there's an enormous amount of value being left on the table. And with a little bit of thought, we can really deliver even more value to Canadians and the communities in which they live. One thing to note is that this webinar is being recorded. It will be available on YouTube afterwards, so you can go back to it. And then we, of course, encourage you to share that with your friends and colleagues. There's going to be a call to action throughout the webinar, and my colleague Emma will be posting in the chat, and that is to complete the online form to learn more about the products offered. So you can see at canactiveinsights.ca, learn more. You can go there and we'll reach out to you afterwards to walk you through some of this stuff. Yeah, we also today we want to showcase a brand new website. So what you're seeing there is our brand new website. It's quite easy to navigate. And it really explains, what is it we're trying to do here? You can see that what's scrolling there now is a whole bunch of free functionality, and then there is some paid functionality. Our goal here is really to democratize access to this. So in partnership with Active Exchange, we are really trying to drive down the price of this. And what I invite everyone to think of here is it's not fee for service as much as it is contributing to this larger data effort. And the more people that we are able to, bring this value to, the less it's going to cost all of us. So we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. The other thing I really encourage everyone to do is use the question and answer function for questions. We're gonna go to that later. And as I mentioned at the top, we have Chris Patterson from Active Exchange, who's going to be standing on by. He's one of those bright data scientist kind of minds, so he can help us sort through some of the technical details as necessary. And of course, we're willing to follow up with you if you want to learn more. I also want to now invite my colleague and friend Kim Gertler from the Sport Information Resource Center, CIRC as we call it, to say a few words. Over to you, Kim.
Merci, Martin, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Et bonjour à tous mes amis francophones. J'aimerais commencer par noter que le webinaire va être en anglais, principalement en anglais aujourd'hui, mais n'hésitez pas à poser vos questions en français, que ce soit en levant la main ou utilisant la boîte à questions. On va faire de notre mieux de répondre vos questions, soit ici ou faire un suivi par après, séparément par courriel. Et puis, pour plus d'informations, allez visiter notre site web. Il y a un tab en haut pour l'option française, francophone. Beaucoup, beaucoup d'informations. On est très heureux de partager notre site web et tous les détails pour vous. Alors, allez visiter. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Kim. And I forgot to introduce someone as a bit of star of the show. So we have a panelist you're going to be hearing from in a moment. Her name is Katie Matthews, and she's joining us from Tennis Canada. Huge welcome to you, Katie. We'll get to Katie in a moment. Before we do that, I would like to invite our colleague and friend and representative from Active Exchange, Sydney Deschamplain, to say a quick hello and then introduce a video that we have recorded to talk about the movement functionality that we're here to talk about today. Sydney, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Martin. Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you all. I've recorded a 10-minute video walking through the 3 tiers of the movement products. So we have our movement, our activity trends, as well as the visit reports, which we've recently just updated. So Emma, if you don't mind pulling up that video for me. One of the most common questions we get asked is, what is this data and where does it come from? The data is anonymized and permission-based. It's collected from mobile devices where users have opted in to share their location data through various apps. This information is then aggregated to ensure individual users cannot be identified. The data also identifies where a device is consistently located overnight. This helps determine a general home area, not a specific address, but a broader geographic location. Then there's the concept of visit accuracy, which involves converting a large volume of device pings into reliable estimates of visits across different settings. So why us and what's the benefit of a network? It comes down to having a broad set of ground truths. With each new participant added to the network, the model becomes more refined, which improves the accuracy of the visit conversion over time. Once we know the home location, we can start to build a profile of users by integrating additional demographics and lifestyle data sets. This allows us to understand how representative you are of different communities around these locations. And finally, this comes down to the power of the network. On a daily basis, we're discovering new applications and benefits with different organizations using the data in ways we hadn't initially anticipated. This is an area we're going to continue to double down on, particularly around sharing insights and learnings across the network. The goal is to help each organization access high-quality data at lower costs, while also ensuring everyone feels confident in how to use that data to unlock benefits and values and drive meaningful outcomes. Once you've logged in, you're going to want to navigate to the map section. You can use the search bar up in the left-hand corner to look for your location of interest. For this example, we're going to look at Signal Hill in St. John, Newfoundland. To turn our movement on, we're going to want to go up to our 3rd tab here on the right, and we're going to click this Show Movement layer. We have this activity index sensitivity, and for this, I'm going to lower the activity index, and what you're going to see here is our red squares appear on the map. And if I zoom out, you can kind of see it covers all of Canada. So what our movement is we have this grid system, which are 100 by 100 meter square boxes covering all of Canada that are tracking our movement. The darker the red square, the more movement there is in that area. The lighter the red, the less movement. As you can see, roads have lots of movement, so they're darker red, whereas other areas we can see they're a bit lighter. So by adjusting this activity index, we're changing how we see it. We're not changing the movement that's occurring, just the way that we can see it. We have data that goes all the way back to January of 2022. For the purpose of this example, we're going to look at July of 2025. Now you can compare weekends versus weekdays, and you can also change your time of day. So looking at the time of day and adjusting it, we can kind of see how the movement changes. Now this is all part of the free movement. And what this allows you to do is really compare the darker red to the lighter red to give you an idea of whether there's more movement or less movement happening at that specific area. We can change our map into a satellite view to really see what we are looking at. And for example, we can see here that there's a parking lot and there's a parking lot right there. Now, if I change my activity index, I'm going to change back to my grayscale, but if I change my activity index, even just by going up 1, I can see that this parking lot here has darker red compared to this parking lot here. So this is telling me that potentially this parking lot has more movement, more traffic than this one up here. Now, if we are interested in the numbers behind these squares, what we can do is we have our first paid module, which is our activity trends. If you have this on your account, you'd have this additional section down here, which is our activity trends monitoring. What we would want to do is we would want to create a quad key collection. And what this is it's a collection of these red squares. So you can look at just one red square if you would like, but you can also group a whole bunch together. And what we're going to do is we're going to create one together. We're going to name our collection Signal Hill. You can group it. So if you have different groups, if you're looking at just trails, you could put a group for trails. If you're looking at parks, a group for parks. You'll get monthly updates when the data gets refreshed every month. And then you can share it just so that yourself sees it. You can share it so your organization sees it, or you can create user groups and they can see it. Once you're happy with your settings, hit save and select, and you can go and select the quad keys you're interested in. So when selecting quad keys, I like to switch back to satellite view to see what I'm selecting. But for this, we're going to select this kind of path here. I'm going to select maybe some of the paths in here. I'm interested in the parking lot in this building, as well as this parking lot. I see some walkway there. Once you save this, you can come back and edit it at any time. So if I'm happy with this, I can hit save. And what you'll see is it came down to our quad key collections. In my ungrouped collections, we have Signal Hill. If I want to edit it, I would click edit. I can change any of my settings, but I can also edit my quad keys. So if I am like, oh, I don't want to include this one anymore, I can unselect it. So once I'm happy with the quad keys I've selected, I'll hit save. So now what we're going to do is we're going to navigate to our dashboards. In our dashboards, we're going to go into our activity trends dashboard, and we're going to filter our sites here at the top so that we're selecting just Signal Hill. We have filters here at the top of all of our dashboard. We have all of our years. We have all the months. We have a display series. So what we can do is we can look at actually a year-on-year comparison, which I think is super interesting. And what we can see here is with our activity trends, we can see that in the summer months, so in June, July, August, in 2024, which is this pink line here, we had the most movement happening within those quad key collections that we just created. Super interesting as to why 2024 was that popular compared to our other years, but these are the insights that we're gathering. If I scroll down here, we also have our activity by hour of day profile. So we can see, again, we're looking at a year-on-year comparison. So we can see by hour of day over the years, the comparison. Now there are lots of filters here. We can look at a month-on-month comparison. You could look at yearly, like your total, your monthly total. We can change our date type. So right now we're looking at all dates combined, but if you wanted weekdays or only weekends, you can filter. Even our time aggregation, we're looking at hourly, but we could switch to a monthly time aggregation if we wanted, even to a daily time aggregation. So we can really break this down, but this is our activity trends. The last movement product we have is our visit reports. And for our visit reports, we're going to navigate back to our dashboard section, and it's going to be under our pro dashboards. With our visit reports, we're able to draw the physical shape around the area you're interested in. We're not stuck with those square boxes. This allows us to really avoid any roads or anything that is not of point of interest. So for example, here we can see we have kind of jaggedy edges, but we're covering this kind of trail area. So this is what a visit report looks like. We have all of our polygons here at the top, so you are able to filter on and off if you only want to look at one specific one. Right now we are looking at all of them combined. We have our filters here at the top for the report, And we also can see our sample size. So we can see how many devices were picked up for this specific report. Now, our report is broken down into different sections, the first one being our observed visits. So we can see that at the top. And we also have this chart here that we can filter by day, by month, quarter, or year to see visits over time. We also have a visits by day of week breakdown. And then the next section goes over our origin of visitors. So we can see the average distance from place of residence, so how far people are traveling. We can see the difference between our local versus external visitors. And then again, a breakdown exactly of the kilometers of how far they're traveling. We have a visitor origin breakdown by country, by province, region, city, postal code, as well as census. And then we have this all represented here on the map. With our map, if we zoom in here, we have our layers. Our heat map layers are these red squares you can see I've turned on and off. The yellow, less movement, the red, more movement. Our markers are our little tabs to help locate the areas. And then our targeted fences are specifically the locations that we have drawn out. So for example, if I zoom in over here, we can see our shape we've drawn out. And again, it's not a perfect square box. You can draw any shape you want. Our next section goes over movement. So we can see the average speed, the speed distribution, as well as movement direction within your polygons. We also have a heat map here. And what I'm going to do is I will show you an example of one location. So same report, what I've done is I just filtered to one of our locations and we can see the heat map around here. We also have our visitor entry and exit points. So I can turn my marker off. Our targeted fence, again, we can see the perimeter if I zoom in here a little bit. But what we can see here is that everyone is entering here right at the trailhead, which again makes a lot of sense. Our next section we have is our visit duration. So we can see the average visit duration. It is broken down by mornings, middle of the day, and evenings. And we can also see our visit duration distribution. So whether people are spending less than 15 minutes there, all the way up to over an hour. And then the last section here to this report is our visit frequency. So we can see whether people are coming and revisiting. We can see the average time between that person visiting. So the average time between visit distribution, as well as the number of visits per visit distribution. So that is our visit report. We do also offer a demographic report if that is something that you're interested in.
All right, that's amazing, Sydney. Thank you for that. For those who thought that Sydney was going a million miles an hour there, it's because she speeded up a little bit because we wanted to stay within the time frame. We will, of course, take more time to walk you through all of that if you fill out the expression of interest, and we'll follow up with you directly. What I wanted to do now is to share a case study. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's hope that I do this correctly. There we go. So what you should be able to see now is a case study. Can I get a nod from our panelists? Are we looking at the right? Yes, amazing. Okay, so what we're going to talk about here is a very specific real-world example being used by the municipality of Thunder Bay. Data-led approach, public spaces and events. This is about Prince Arthur's Landing. I'll zoom in a bit here. Prince Arthur's Landing, which is on the waterfront, and it's a super vibrant hub with lots of seasonal events. The objectives of this was they wanted to understand the total visitation during the 2024 summer period. They wanted to map the movement hotspots and understand like what was going on so that they can manage things like event logistics, safety, infrastructure for future events, etc. And they wanted to know where the people were coming from, which is very, very useful information. And there are lots of other ways I think you can use the data, so we invite you to think creatively. So what insights were they able to draw? Well, nearly 80,000 visits were recorded at Prince Arthur's Landing during the festival period, which is the 2 summer months, with an average of 31.7 minutes being spent on site by the visitors and folks traveling up to 45 kilometers on average to reach the destination. So they're really catering to a broad community, and those people are coming and they're staying and they're visiting. What you can see is that you can map the hotspots. Where are they going in the festival grounds? And what kind of impact did they have? So the Canada Day alone drew 13,000 visits, right? So this is a marquee community celebration. And imagine, if you're talking to your council about this, you can really start to quantify the value of the people you're serving and bringing people into your municipality, which, you can measure with economic and benefits and health benefits. There's all sorts of other things you can do, but it all starts with the movement. This is really fascinating. You can see event counts related to each of the days. So you have a really good sense of when people are visiting. Obviously, July 1st, people is the big winner. And then there's other really interesting functionality in terms of understanding where people are coming. So half of the visits, or a little more, were from within Thunder Bay, but the balance were from surrounding areas. Even some of us from Ottawa traveled up, as you can see. So this is useful so you could get a real understanding of who is coming to the area that you care about, that you have drawn the polygon around. Outcomes, one of the things, justify continued or increased funding for seasonal activations on your infrastructure, right? You can improve traffic flow. It helps with the logistics. And it helps to shape things like future event scheduling, and figure out when are the proven high engagement days and times. This is all available. You can look at this particular case study on the Can Active Insights website. So if you go to Can Active and you go to the top, you can see the case studies. And I clicked through, and it's hosted, of course, this particular case study on the Active Exchange website. They're our data partner. So I am going to stop the screen share there by clicking that. I should know my way around Zoom. There we go. And I think that's it for me on the case study. But again, we have multiple case studies up there, so we encourage you to look at them. And before we hand it back over to Kim, I just wanted to say that, we looked at a municipal case study here, but this is equally applicable to federal, provincial, and territorial governments, right? You can make compelling funding cases, plan and invest with more confidence, improve policy evaluation. If there's value in understanding who's coming to your facilities, then this is something that you want in your toolkit. And the last thing I'll say, before I invite Kim to talk a little bit about some of the values to provincial and national sporting organizations, is that we also think that researchers can take great value from this. So much so that in a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, we're going to be having another webinar specifically aimed at the research community. So if you're a researcher, you want to know how to use this, how to get access to the back-end data, stay tuned. We're going to be following up with another webinar. And without further ado, I want to invite Kim back to talk a little bit about PSOs and NSOs. Kim?
That sounds great. Thank you, Martin. So as you can tell, this is a pretty incredibly powerful tool that brings in many layers of data together. We've talked about infrastructure, we've talked about participation trends, movement patterns. It's also bringing in survey data, census data, as well as impact measurement data, all into one dashboard. Now, one of the consistent challenges that we all have as sport leaders, and I'm speaking from a sport context, but this is really any leader in our sport, physical activity, recreation, and park space, is making decisions with incomplete or disconnected information. And that's really the space that Can Active Insight is trying to support. Alors, l'objectif est très simple, c'est de faciliter l'accès aux données et leur utilisation concrète pour les organisations à tous les niveaux. And I feel that the top three things that we feel Can Active can do to help support our sport leaders, and again, leaders in our sector, is first of all, making stronger cases for funding. From a national or provincial territorial sport organization perspective, this supports stronger system level advocacy and policy conversations. And for our community organizations, it helps strengthen local grant applications and funding proposals. And for all cases, it allows you to move beyond participation numbers, which many of you are already collecting, and demonstrating a broader impact on health, social, and economic areas in a way that resonates with our decision makers. Now, the second goal we feel CanActive can help with is to help you plan programs and investments with more confidence. Now, at all levels, CanActive can really help you take the guesswork out of a decision that you have to make. You can see where the gaps are, where demand is highest, and it can also help you figure out if resources are being used, overused or underused. So instead of relying on assumptions, organizations can see which spaces are underused over capacity when peak time occurs and where there may be gaps in access. And Sydney did a great job in showing how that can be seen. And another interesting way CanActive can really help is figuring out if you're reaching the people who you're not currently reaching. It's important to know who's there, but also who is not participating. And this might be able to help you grow your participation level in a more inclusive way. By identifying who is not participating and why, you can potentially design better programs that better meets the needs of underserviced communities. So you're not just increasing numbers in general, you're expanding impact where it really matters the most. But ultimately, at the end of the day, this isn't about collecting more data, it's about making a lot of data more usable. But you know what? Enough from me. Let's hear somebody who's used the tool in a very practical way to help drive better decisions. And I'm really excited to introduce to Katie Matthews, who's been using the platform and will be sharing a real world example. So Katie Matthews is the Community Projects Coordinator at Tennis Canada's in their Facilities Development Department, where she and her colleagues work to maintain and expand access to tennis facilities across the country. She currently manages the National Bank Play Your Court program, and that's a funding initiative that supports the refurbishment of municipal outdoor tennis courts. So I'm really excited for you to hear more from Katie.
Great. Thank you so much for that intro, Kim. So yes, I'm Katie. I am the Community Projects Coordinator at Tennis Canada. So Tennis Canada started our partnership with Active Exchange just over a year ago. And while the wider tennis development team that we work on now also benefits from CanActive Insights and Active Exchange, which I will definitely be going into later, it was our facilities development team that kind of initiated the partnership. So if we could move to the next slide, please. So I can begin by sort of explaining what the Facilities Development Department does, and I've split this into our three main focuses. So as Kim mentioned, we have the National Bank Player Court Program. This is a grant program that funds the refurbishment of publicly accessible municipal courts. So those are the courts in local parks. They're often free to use. They often operate on a first come, first served basis. And often they're not very well maintained. It's really easy for them to sort of fall through the cracks when municipalities are already spread so thin. So Player Court kind of helps relieve some of that budgeting and capacity stress and helps turn neglected facilities into like very high quality community courts. We also have the year-round community tennis courts program presented by Rogers. And this is another one of our funding opportunities, but this one aims to increase Canada's access to indoor courts. So obviously we have some very long winters here, meaning that there are thousands of courts that sit unused for sometimes up to 6 months of the year. And the demand for indoor courts is currently much higher than our supply. So this program aims to increase our inventory of courts that can be played on year-round. And lastly, we focus on developing larger regional and provincial tennis facilities. And this just helps us further grow the sport of tennis in Canada. And it also allows Canada's high performance athletes to train here at home rather than having to travel for it. So given these three focuses, our partnership with Active Exchange began with some very general objectives, namely being that we needed to find a way to identify potential projects. We needed to advocate for their development, and then we needed to track our project facilities after the projects were completed. And collecting this information is extremely difficult when it comes to public infrastructure. So some of our work is with tennis clubs, and they have membership programs and court booking systems, which makes collecting like demographic and usage data a little easier. But most of our work for all three focuses is with municipalities. So unless we are willing to have someone sit outside a tennis court all day and sort of just keep note of who comes and goes, it's a bit harder to get concrete data for them. So yeah, there was a need to understand where Canada's courts are, who uses them, how they're being used, when they're being used, and CanActive Insights with Active Exchange was a very clear solution to that problem for us. So if we can move to slide 3, please. So I'll start with one of the central ways our team uses Active Exchange, and that is building community profiles. So every year, our department speaks with our provincial and territorial tennis associations and we get their input. And then we also conduct research of our own, now with the help of CanActive Insights and Active Exchange. And this helps us select specific locations or facilities that we want to focus our outreach efforts on and hopefully partner with that year. So once those locations have been decided for us, we can add them to the list of facilities we're tracking, and then we get to start collecting information about them. So when it comes to our outreach efforts, this allows us to approach potential partners, with a detailed and data-backed case on why they should focus, their already limited budget and capacity on tennis. So for example, we could look at a parks master plan and we could see that maybe they've identified youth sport. We pull up the slides again. Perfect. So I'll just jump back in. So we also like to continue tracking completed projects. And this is for two main reasons. So one is to see the usage changes that a revitalization or an expansion or a dome can have on a facility. And this is something I'll definitely be going into later. But the other is to make the most of a new facility by recommending or connecting a municipality with suitable programs for them. So again, looking at this profile here, we can see that Sundays are a very low use day. So there could be an opportunity for the Ontario Tennis Association to come and hold some of their tournaments here on those days. Thursdays and Fridays as well, you can see are kind of low use, and there's also a bit of a usage dip between 1 to 3 p.m. So given that there's a bit of an opening during school hours, this might be a good time for a nearby school to bring their students and do tennis programs there. These are actual data points as well for a project we did in Brampton, and I believe that this court is actually now a nearby school's tennis club courts and tournament courts. So it's really cool that they followed through on that. So yeah, I'm going to go further into how we use this type of information for on-court programming later, but I do just want to go back to advocacy first. So if we can move to the next slide, please. Great. So one of our main focuses for our team is eliminating tennis dead zones. And dead zones are kind of exactly what they sound like. They're areas where tennis facilities are in demand, but they're either extremely limited or just totally non-existent. So one of the ways we can be made aware of these dead zones is by seeing how far people are traveling to a court. So just for context, Tennis Canada has set a distance of about 50 kilometers as kind of the limit of what might be a reasonable distance for someone to travel to a tennis facility. So the chart you see on the right, this is from the same facility as the last slide in Brampton. So Brampton is obviously a pretty highly populated municipality. They have a decent number of their own courts. They're near Toronto and Mississauga, so there are other public courts nearby that they can access. So this kind of split here makes sense that no one really needs to travel very far to access tennis courts. If you look at the facility on the left, though, they obviously have a much higher number of users who are traveling quite far to access courts. And when we looked into this facility here further, we confirmed that they have very few courts in the area. So it makes sense that some of these users might have no choice but to travel 50 kilometers or more to access their nearest court. It's also, there could be users here in the 50 to 100 kilometer that do have tennis courts. But with limited infrastructure, as I'm sure people know, comes like limited opportunities. So it's possible that their town might only have one court. So the court is always busy and they're waiting hours to play, or they want to join a club or a league, and that's pretty impossible to do with just one court. So they might be driving to this nearby municipality that has the infrastructure to offer them better court access, or offer them opportunities to be part of a tennis community. So looking at this kind of travel distance or movement distance is one really great way for us to flag a tennis dead zone. And then once it has been flagged to us, we can start looking further into where the traveling users are coming from, and we can start seeing where facilities might be needed the most. So if we could move to slide 5, please. So this is a really interesting example we came across. So these are the movement results for a facility in Chilliwack in British Columbia. And as you can see, like a vast majority of their users are traveling 50 to 100 kilometers to access these specific courts. So if you look at where most of the users are coming from, that's the graph on the right side. They're coming from Hope, and that's a small municipality just over 50 kilometers away from Chilliwack. So we looked into Hope's tennis inventory, and we found that they only have 2 municipal courts. We also looked at the municipalities kind of leading from Hope to Chilliwack, and all those along the way also only have really single or double courts, which, as I said, makes it really hard to hold programs or clinics or start clubs. So these results make a lot of sense if you, as well, when you look and do a quick search, and this facility here is actually one of the main facilities used by the Chilliwack Tennis Club, and that it's also the closest tennis club to Hope. So it makes a lot of sense when you get to start putting this together. And then on top of all of that, the visitor segments at the bottom here, these are the specific demographic groupings that Active Exchange has provided us with. And they kind of break down further traits and habits of users at the facility. So I don't have the exact descriptions here with me for these 5, but I believe that 4 out of 5 of them are for senior demographics. So this is a very clear picture for us of who's using the courts. And taking all of this and thinking about facility advocacy, this is a great example of some things that we could bring to the municipality of Hope and show them that their residents, and seemingly specifically their older residents, could maybe benefit from a new bank of courts, or from expanding their current bank of courts to 4 maybe, which would be better for programs or tournaments, so that their senior residents can stay active and stay connected to their community without having to travel 50 plus kilometers to do it. Next slide, please. So yeah, I'd say this is the number one most beneficial thing that has come out of our partnership, and that's having visible proof that developing sport infrastructure is a great investment. So something we say a lot, something we hear a lot, I'm sure most of you hear it too, is that a phrase on the left, if you build it, they will come. And it's one thing for us to say it. Obviously, the phrase exists for a reason, but it's a very different thing to be able to show exactly how true it is. So if you look at the graph on the top, this shows the usage for a set of courts that we helped refurbish, and they now host a large tennis tournament in the summer. So you can see July and August in 2025, that's when the usage peaked. But you can also see that the usage was pretty high in the months before and after as well, from other tournaments starting, from tennis leagues, and just from general use that came after construction. So I'm sure most people can understand that like overgrown, cracked concrete courts are not the most inspiring to use. So often just revitalizing them is kind of all it takes for a community to gather. If you look at the bottom graph as well, this is a usage for one of our year-round projects. So you can see they already it was a fairly well-used facility, but there are those definite low months in the winter where the courts were pretty much abandoned. So we worked with this tennis club to have their courts domed. And as you can see, they're used all year round now. I think they actually saw about a 50% increase in users from 2024 to 2025. And the winter months, as you can see as well, are actually the most high traffic months. So this was very clearly a big hit with the community. So yeah, having concrete data like this, it's extremely beneficial when advocating for facility development, but it's also really great to show our program sponsors. So obviously you saw 2 of our programs, National Bank and Rogers, are our sponsors, and these are just really great things to be able to bring to them, to show them that our joint initiatives are doing what they intended to do. So it strengthens our partnership with them, and it just further instills their trust in us and in the programs that they sponsor. Next slide, please. Yeah, so over the past year, we have started introducing our colleagues from other tennis development teams to the platform, and they have found a number of ways that they can also use the data. So I'll start with the first one. Community Tennis Leagues is a program facilitated by our provincial and territorial tennis associations, and it pairs players with similarly skilled players in their area. So by using the visitor segments data, this team can determine sort of what areas might be more likely to have players that need to find other players. So this is often young people or people who are single. And then within those areas, they can find high traffic courts where marketing for the program would be the most beneficial. Game Set Equity, this is an initiative that offers accessible tennis programming and professional development for self-identifying women and girls. So the team that runs this program, they're able to look through the community profiles that our team has highlighted, and they can identify areas of needs and opportunity for their own programs. They also have a funding program as well. It's for tennis organizations that support underserved communities. So they've been able to use the census data map, and they can kind of use that as an additional resource when they're reviewing their applications for that grant. And then lastly, Rogers First Set. This is our introduction to tennis program. It's offered through many community clubs, but we also developed a tennis in schools program that it provides teachers with training and resources so that they can run their own Rogers First Set program with their students. So for SET, they've now been able to conduct like very thorough outreach by using the facilities filter on the map. So they can identify schools that have tennis courts, or they can identify community clubs that are close to schools that could facilitate a First Step program for them, and then they can start making those connections. This team also coordinates initiatives for Tennis Month, which is in June, by the way. So they're also able to use that movement tracker that Sydney showed us and compare year-over-year court usage for facilities that deliver the Tennis Month initiatives. So they can show the effects that Tennis Month programs have on court usage. And then one more slide. Great. So I hope that wasn't too much information, but yes, there's just been quite a few ways that we've been able to use the platform to help support our work. And I'm sure as we continue introducing our other tennis development teams to the platform, that the numbers of ways we can use it will rise. So I'm happy to take any questions, either, I don't know about time, but I also have put my email here. So if anyone has any questions about how Tennis Canada has used the platform or about any of the tennis development programs that I highlighted, please feel free to reach out to me by email. But aside from that, that is everything from me.
Thank you, Katie. That was really great. And you did go through a lot. I have to tell you, I learned a lot. And I think that I think the listeners and viewers did as well. Folks, we're going to move to Q&A. Does anyone have a question for Katie or for any of us? You can post those in the Q&A function. We're going to probably respond to some of these questions in writing. There's some more detailed one. I noticed one from you, Mathieu Belanger. And from you, Benjamin Jonah. We'll come to those in a moment. And I encourage my colleagues, Chris Patterson and Sydney, just to have a quick look and see if there's any that they can answer there in writing. Let's take a simple one here. So the first one is, how far back in time does the movement data reference? Does it go pre-pandemic? I think the answer to that, Sydney, you'll correct me if I'm wrong. I think the answer to that is 2022. So not quite pre-pandemic. Is that right? Or is it 2021?
That's correct. So the activity trends go back to 2022. However, the visit reports, we can only go 2 years back. So if you are doing a visit report right now, we just go to 2024.
Okay, excellent. Let me look here again. Is there data for most locations in Canada right now? We're a small city in Saskatchewan. We love small cities in Saskatchewan, let me just say that. But I think the answer is yes. Of course, it's all dependent on how much flow of people that you have through there. But and again, Sid, not to put you on the spot, but I think we can get data from almost every corner of the country. People have, if there's people with cell phones, we can get the data.
Yes,
Right.
that's correct.
Hey, and while we're doing that, Sydney, another question came up in the chat, and I know that you talked to this briefly at the beginning, but people are asking about the data. Where does it come from, and the permissions, and so my understanding is that the data is all derived from anonymized cell phone pings, which are aggregated, and all of it is permission based, so that the users on their phones have set the permissions to share this data, and that's how we're getting the data. Correct?
Yes, that's also correct.
Yeah, and all maintained to the highest data standards in Canada, and it's all Canadian data. Okay, let's look here. Other questions. How does the tool integrate infrastructure data with movement outcomes? Are there case studies where this data has supported evaluation of road safety programs? So there's two questions there. How does the tool integrate infrastructure data with movement outcome? Well, it's an interesting question, because CAN Active Insights is the evolution of two other projects. The first is the CPRA infrastructure database. And so, this all started from our perspective at CPRA with infrastructure. And so we still encourage people to upload their infrastructure. You can look at, creating polygons around that infrastructure. And then are there case studies where this data has supported evaluation of road safety programs? Sid, I'll ask you to answer that. My guess is that the answer is we don't have case studies on road safety programs. But Chris Patterson, what are your thoughts on that one? I see you came off of, yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so I mean, obviously that's not the industry that we're working in, but we are aware of jurisdictions around the world using even just the activity trends data to monitor road traffic. So saving having to put counters in the road all over the place to understand your traffic patterns and usage. So there's no reason it couldn't be used for that.
Right, right. So if that's of interest to you, then reach out to us and we can show you how to set up the software so that you can be looking more carefully at what's happening on the roads. Charlene Gray asks, and this is a question for you, Katie, has this rolled out to provincial membership, or is it just sitting at the Tennis Canada level right now? Any other benefits to membership directly? So this is specifically to your presentation, Katie.
Is this about memberships with Active Exchange? I'm not sure.
No,
Might
I
be a
think
silly
I
question.
think what they're talking about is the provincial membership. So your partners at Tennis Canada, your provincial partners. And Charlene, if I'm mischaracterizing this, please add to your question. How is this rolled out to the provincial membership, or is it just sitting at the Tennis Canada level right now?
I mean, I can only speak to our experience starting the partnership with Tennis Canada. I'm unsure if PSOs are using it right now. What I know of is that we are the only NSO, as far as I know, using this program or platform.
Okay. We certainly invite the PSOs to reach out. One of the things we want to do is connect you, and if you see value in this and you see value in the broader projects, obviously we really want everyone using this. Okay, let's look again. And both Chris and Sid, I encourage you to look at the questions as well, see if there's anything there that you can add. So Christine asks, grants available for Pro Tools use for small clubs. Are there grants available for the Pro? My local soccer club is advocating for indoor construction. So no grants available, but what we are doing is trying to drive the price down. And so we're looking at ways, we're actively working with Active Exchange to drive the price down. One of the things that we're deeply committed to is making this as accessible as possible. So what we're working towards is for any sector organization to be able to access visit reports for under $10 per month per location. We're not quite there yet, but that's what we're aiming to do. As we said at the beginning, I'll restate now, we're trying to democratize the data. So no, there are no grants right now, but we are trying to drive the price down, and we are actively looking for other funding sources. So we ourselves are applying for grants to bring more resources in so that we can bring more of this functionality to you. So I answered that one. Let's look. Munira Sayer, is the data adjusted at all for market penetration, potential externalities between people with devices reporting versus people who are using facilities but not sharing data? So I think this is really a question about, are there other data sources, Chris, that beyond the devices? And I think this particularly applies to the municipal audience, right? Because there are ways that, so Chris, over to you.
Yeah, certainly. So there are a few corrections that are made in the data. So if you imagine, there's multiple devices out there, millions of devices out there running multiple apps. There's a bunch of deduplication and correction from the data sets that are aggregated because the same device will be pinging in multiple applications. The other element, obviously, is what was kind of alluded to in the question, in that there's a portion of the population that doesn't consent to having their device tracked and their device behavior tracked, or location behavior tracked. So we do have estimates monthly on that throughout Canada, based on essentially a total number of devices known to exist versus the numbers that show up in that informed consent data set. So that's the one element of it. The other element is then using the data just using the data alone is just one element of building your analysis. Obviously, if you have a facility where you're measuring traffic, you've got scans in at the gates and things like that, you've got some ground truth data. That's ultimately very helpful in aligning or correlating or calibrating is the word I'm looking for. The outputs from this much more technical service to what's happening in the real world. So yeah, there's certainly elements of gaps in the data itself that we can correct for.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for that, Chris. And stand by. We're going to go back to Matthew Belanger's question. Matthew says, thank you for putting together such an impressive infrastructure and for your leadership on this initiative. You're very welcome, Matthew. Thank you for your support and for being here. Matthew has a clarifying question regarding the definition and composition of the movement data. When exploring the map, he noticed that the types of movements shown seem to vary across years. For example, in 2024, there appears to be substantial movement along bike path, which signals physical activity and movement. Whereas in more recent years, the data seem to reflect primarily motorized movements. So can we clarify the nature of the movement data differs year by year? Chris?
Sure. I don't want to say it's an optical illusion, but I think it is a little bit of an optical illusion in the platform. What I would suggest is fill out the expression of interest, and we get on a call with Sydney so that we can look at the actual data behind those maps. There may be a few that are processed in a way that essentially created those hotspots back in 2024 that are creating the hotspots elsewhere now. Yeah, so I would caution reading too much into the relative differences over long periods of time between the two, like between two heat maps, and defer to looking at the data. But we can send more information out after this on general comparisons of the data across long periods and some of the limitations of the activity trend data.
Yeah, I think for a question like that, Matthew, we'd really love to walk through some of it with you, and maybe we can roll up our sleeves and look at what you're seeing directly, and then we'll sort through it. And in fact, that applies to everyone. We're getting very close to the end of time here. I got a lot of questions. We're going to try and knock off one or two more. But if we don't get to you, please write to us, info@cpra.ca. There's also a way to connect with us through the expression of interest form. And, we want to talk to you about this. So please do reach out. We'd be happy to schedule something with you directly. Let's go to Benjamin Jonah, who asked, looking at the visitor data and drawing your own area, how accurate are the data points? So related to the custom polygons. We've investigated other software that gives anywhere between 5 to 20 m of accuracy. I'm not quite sure what that means, but anyhow, this is really a question about data accuracy. So, lack of data accuracy makes it difficult to focus on specific amenities within the park space. So can you talk a little bit to that, Chris and or Sid?
Sure. Yeah. Not to put it back on all the attendees, but take out your cell phone and open up Google Maps or Find My Device or whatever, and scroll in on your little blue dot. That's the accuracy that we're getting. It's not an accuracy of the system; it's an accuracy of the device. So better devices will be more accurate. Other devices will be less accurate, and it may depend on how long you've had your Maps app open, how long how much you're actively using your phone. It can be we had an example Sid and I went through, like inside of corrugated steel buildings or any sort of reinforced concrete building, your device location is likely to show outside the building because of the interference of the steel rebar or the walls, corrugated steel walls. It's not so bad in a house because it's all wood construction, but there's some interference from like electrical wiring and things like that. So within a park space, I would say, again, within say a 20 meter, 30 meter square area kind of thing, I think you can get fairly accurate results, as far as who's in, using the playground versus who's using the washroom facility. I don't know, however many meters away. But yeah, it really does come down actually to the device's GPS receiver accuracy more so than anything else. So
Well, thank you for that, Chris. Folks, we've run out of time. There's still a number of questions here. Feel free to write to us. I'll take a simple one from Dorsey Sharif, who's asking, what if the visitor doesn't carry a cell phone? They don't get picked up in the data. But I don't know very many people who don't carry cell phones these days. That said, they could have the settings so that they're not sharing the data, and that's possible. But most people do. So I think we're going to wrap it up there. Again, if you want to know more about this, please reach out to us. There are 3 free modules, so go to canactiveinsights.ca. You can see very clearly what is the free functionality. You can sign up for a free account. One of the free products is the basic movement data, which we've talked about today, but there are a couple of others. And then again, on the paid products, we're really doing our best to democratize this. We have a very a collaborative partner in Active Exchange, and we're trying to find ways to bring this data to the sector. Can Active Insights is by the sector for the sector. I really do invite you to learn more about it. Go to canactiveinsights.ca, sign up for a free account. I want to say another huge thank you to our partners at the Canadian Fitness Lifestyle Research Institute. We could not do this work without Christine Cameron. Huge thank you to Kim Gertler and the team at the Sport Information Resource Center, CERC. And of course, on behalf of all of us here at the Canadian Parks and Recreation Association, we're dedicated to celebrating the great work that you are doing in the sector. This is a tool that we want to bring to the sector. We want you to reach out. This webinar will be on YouTube, so feel free to review it and reach out to us anytime. Again, direct follow-up questions can go to info@cpra.ca. So thank you to everyone for participating. We'll see you again soon. We will be having more webinars in the series, so keep an eye on our website, and we look forward to continuing the conversation with you about this important subject. Merci beaucoup. Bienvenue. Passez un bon après-midi.